Hey guys, welcome to another exciting game from FIDE WorldCup 2019. This game was played between Mamedyaro, who is an Azerbaijani grandmaster, and he is number 7 in the world right now. He has a FIDE rating of 2767 and he also has the white pieces. His opponent, Radjabov, who is also from Azerbaijan, he is also a grandmaster and number 15 in the world right now, also a FIDE rating of 2758. So let's check out the game. We have d4 on the board by Mamedyaro and knight to f6 in response. c4, e6, knight to c3 and d5. We have queen's gambit declined on the board. c takes d5, e takes d5, the exchange variation, and now bishop to g5, pinning the knight, also this knight is attacking this pawn on d5. But for the moment it's defended by the queen, so you don't really have to worry about it. Bishop to e7, now defending the knight in case of this captures. You can have bishop captures and it's all good. e3, supporting this pawn in the center, and now castles. Bishop to d3, a nice developing move, putting it on a wonderful diagonal, eyeing this h7 pawn, and now c6. Knight g to e2, knight b to d7. Now what Radjabov wants to do is if bishop captures, then knight captures. You bring in the second knight here and it's all good. But after knight b to d7, it's queen to c2. The plan is simple. You capture here, and if knight captures, then it's all good. But if bishop captures, then you can also capture here with your bishop. Give king a check, the king has to move, and now the h file is open. I mean, you can also bring your rook into the game, have a nice rook lift, and attack the king from there. So, rook to e8, developing move. The white has not yet castled, so black wants to take advantage of that and bring its rook into the game, attacking this file which the king is still on. And Mamedyaro knows this, so he immediately castles. Knight to f8, now going back. This knight will now remaneuver itself to either g6 square or e6 square, depending on how the game goes. f3, g6 now, and bishop to h4. Just bringing the bishop back. Now that it has no use being on this square, it just comes back. Now it's going to remaneuver itself either here or to this square, to g3 square, and then have nice control over this diagonal. Knight to e6 as planned. King to h1, just getting the king out of harm's way, because this pawn here is weak, and it will be under attack for the rest of the game, because as you can see, the pawn chain currently starts at g2, but once you push this f3 pawn to f4, or even keep pushing it even further, this pawn now becomes weak and it becomes a pawn chain. So this pawn will be a target for Radjabov for the rest of the game. But we have b5 first, rook a to c1. This is a new position in the game. All the previous positions have been played before, and rook to d1 was played, a3 was played in this position, but rook a to c1 is a new move in this game, and from here onwards it's completely a new game for both these players. Bishop to d7, developing a move. Knight to d1, rook to c8. Once this file opens, you always want to have a rook on your c file, now attacking the queen, so immediately queen to d2, getting out of harm's way. a6, supporting this pawn here on b5. b4 now, not allowing Radjabov to push any more pawns, and knight to e4. The reason why knight moved from here to e4 is that now you have a discovered attack on this bishop. So if you capture the knight, either way, I'm going to capture your bishop, And this is a pretty important piece in the game, at least that's what Radjabov thinks. So we'll see what happens. Bishop captures on e4. Let's see what happens if the f-pawn captures. We have now bishop captures on h4, getting rid of this nice dark square white bishop, and e5 and f6, and this game can continue. This is a wonderful piece. You don't really want to keep this piece here, so eventually white is going to push its g pawn to g3, and if once the bishop goes back, even h4 is a possibility, and once the bishop hides on h6, then there's nothing black can do. So none of that, it's just bishop captures c4. You might also think, what if this bishop from here captures the bishop on e7? So let's show you that variation as well. Bishop captures on e7. We have first knight captures queen, because this knight here was attacking the queen. Bishop captures d8. You will have to capture this, otherwise it's going to be useless. Knight captures f1. Now you also lose a rook. And now bishop to f6, getting it to safety, but knight to d2. So you have lost a queen and a rook for a bishop and a queen. So you are basically down the exchange. And this knight is not trapped because it can easily go to c4 and get out of there. So the knight doesn't have to really worry about anything. So none of this was played. After bishop captures e4, we have bishop captures h4, bishop to b1, just getting the bishop all the way back to b1, from where now it's going to protect this beautiful diagonal. And now a5, just attacking this b pawn here. a3, defending it. A captures b4, a captures b4, and queen to e7. Now look at this. This a file is completely open, but I'm not sure if even if it's open, if either of the players are going to be using any of these files, because currently both the players are playing on the king side. Both of the kings are castled on the king side, and both of them have some nice attacks going on the king side. This black's piece here is just wonderful for now. Now f4. So in case now this bishop could be trapped after you play something like g3, but then it can escape from f6 and doesn't really have to worry. But you cannot keep it for too long. Knight to f8, trying to remaneuver the knight. Knight to g1, just white does the same. Knight to d7, that's where we're going to remaneuver, and from there it's once this moves, once the bishop comes back and it moves back, this knight could jump here. It also keeps an eye on this wonderful square, so we'll see what happens to that knight. Knight to f3, bishop to f6, now returning because the bishop was attacked. Knight to e5, trying to attack this knight. White just wants to get rid of that knight, and knight to b6. Now it wants to remaneuver on the other side and get this wonderful outpost here. But this knight is here guarding that outpost, so let's see what happens. Knight to b2. Now if you capture this knight and you want to put your knight that's on the b file onto the c file and play c4, basically knight to c4, then I can capture it with my knight, so it won't be an outpost anymore. Knight to c4 as planned, and now knight b captures c4, b pawn captures c4, and e4 now. Just pushing, asking if you want to capture. If you capture here, I'm going to capture the pawn on c4 because this pawn won't be defended anymore. And now this pawn, your black pawn here on e4, will also be a target for the rest of the game. So bishop to g7, just retreating the bishop, making room for the pawn from f7 to be pushed. Rook c to e1, queen to c7, now attacking this piece. Once this knight moves from here, because the next plan is to push your pawn and move the knight. Once the knight moves, you can bring your rooks into the game and have a great attack against these two pawns. h4, bishop to a6. Now defending also, if the great threat here is to push the pawn to c3, and then you attack the queen and you attack the rook from here. So it will be a discovered attack. So you have to defend this. Rook to f2, getting out of the way. Rook to b8, now attacking this pawn. Once the queen moves from here, you can attack this pawn and even grab it. h5. White wants to push on the queen side. It wants to open this wonderful g file, because the king is still on the g file, and the only thing that's guarding right now is its bishop. So queen to d2, queen to d6, I'm sorry, and queen to d1. Just getting out of the way, trying to go here and create a nice attack. D takes e4, says why not, let's capture it. Bishop takes e4, rook takes b4, and now knight takes f7. This was a puzzling move because you are just sacrificing your knight and you don't really have anything to show for. So I mean, the king has to capture. There's nothing you can do. King captures f7, and now f5. Bishop to f6. This was kind of a strange position to put your bishop here like that, because what the engine recommends is knight taking on e4 instead, and then once f takes g6 check, king to g8, and now rook takes e4 and h takes g6. And now if you see, the material is slightly in black's favor, since he has two bishops for a rook in comparison, and same three pawns on either side, but this pawn is attacked, is going to be picked eventually, but it's not an issue, and this could be an easily it's a drawn endgame. But after bishop to f6, f take g6 was played, and king to g7. Now here you have to give a king check first in order to keep the tensions on the board, and I'll show you what happens once you give the check. So you say h6 check, king takes h6, and now g takes h7. This pawn is nicely protected, so there's nothing you can do. You have to keep an eye on this queening square, so your bishop or your rook is now going to be constantly keeping an eye on the square. Then you have queen takes d4. Now rook. Now here is a different variation. Rook takes f6 with check, and this variation leads to queen takes f6, getting out of the check, and now this queen comes in to d2 to deliver a check. It's giving a check, and now you're going to pick up the rook here. But this doesn't work. I'll tell you why. You have to move the queen. Obviously you cannot capture because it's protected, so you move the queen, and now you get queen captures rook on b4. After this, black queen will now deliver a check with queen to h4 check. Once you move your king, simply captures, and queen captures on e4. And now if you count the pieces in the next move, white is going to lose this wonderful pawn here on h7. This pawn is nicely protected. If the bishop comes to b4, b5, both these pawns will be protected, and there's nothing white can do here. Now this is clearly losing position for white. But there is another variation after queen takes d4 that could be played, and that variation is queen to g4. This is how white can keep its advantage going. And now rook takes e4, rook takes e4, queen takes f2, and now you promote your h8 pawn to a queen, and bishop takes h8. This is necessary to do because now you have to give a check, queen to h3, and this is a completely drawn position. In the previous scenario, white was losing. In this scenario, at least white can draw, if not maintain an advantage. King to g7, it has to go up the board. Again, queen checks. If king goes back, then queen will keep going back and checking, and then it's a draw. So queen has to occupy one of these two squares, f8, and then you're going to give a rook check. You just pick up the queen here, and now this is completely a drawn game because white can now keep checking the king, and the king cannot hide anywhere even if it wants to, even though he has these three pieces. But these two pieces, the light square bishop and the rook, are too far away, and it's this pawn is a hindrance. So if you can imagine this pawn not being here and this rook, then it would be a problem because rook would capture the queen, and then it's all good. But now the king just has to move. You will get a few more checks, and there is nothing black king can do here. Just keep giving checks, and it's going to be a draw eventually. There's nothing black or white can do about this. But thankfully none of this was played. After bishop to f6, we have f captures on g6 with check, king to g7, and g captures on h7 instead. I was saying that he should have played h6, but instead he played g captures h7. This gives black the complete advantage, and now it's all over. Let's show you how this game ended. Queen to g3, now attacking the rook here, and even cutting this file off from the king. Rook to f3, attacking the queen. Queen h4 check. Rook to h3, and now rook captures e4. A wonderful move. Here you cannot capture, because if you capture, rook captures h4, then rook captures h4 with check, king to g1, now bishop d4 check, bishop captures d4 check, king to f1, c3, now it's a discover check, and there is nothing you can do. You have to block with the queen if you want to prolong the game, and this is mate in 2. Now you block with the rook, and finally the rook comes to h1, and this is checkmate. It's game over. So after rook takes e4, you cannot capture this queen here, but instead you have to play rook to f1 to survive, and rook to b3. Now just going after this wonderful rook here. Rook takes h4, finally you can capture the queen. Rook takes h4 with check, king to g1, bishop to d4 check, rook to f2, just blocking it. There's nothing you can do, and rook to b2. This was the final position in the game where Mamedyaro said black has too much material on the board, there's nothing he can do. These two pawns will eventually be captured. This piece is, you're losing this piece, and there's absolutely nothing white can do here. So he resigned, and I can show you the continuation. What would happen? Queen takes d4 with check, rook takes d4, rook takes b2, and rook to b1 check, king to h2, c3, you have a pass pawn so you can keep pushing, rook to c2, rook to d3, now protecting, rook to c1, there's nothing white can do, all it has to do is wait, bishop to c4, king to g1, bishop to c3, now it's finally controlling the c2 square, and you're going to push the pawn, king to h2, c2 now, h6 check, but you're going to pick up the piece here. There's nothing white can do, just wait for it. g4, now king takes h6, Rook to g1 and rook to d1. Finally, you cut off this rook from coming to from its attack on c1, and you're finally going to bring a queen into the game. Rook takes d1, c takes d1, bringing the queen, and king to h3. King to g5. I mean, it's all over. King to g2, queen e2 check. King to g1. King takes g4, king to h1, bishop d5 check, king to g1, and king to g2. This is finally checkmate. So Mamedyaro, being a great GM that he is, calculated all of this precisely, and back at this position, after playing rook to b2, after black playing rook to b2, Mamedyaro resigned the game. This was move 44 that he resigned. And that's all we have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the game. This was a wonderful technical game. If you have any questions, comments or concerns, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'll try to come up with something better next time. So that's all from me. Namaste. See you soon.